Well, I'll go ahead and give a little kickoff. I'm going to say welcome back to everyone who's joining us on today's Singular live stream. Really excited to dive into this topic. Super excited because today we're going to show you how we have cleaned up our house, so to speak. We've organized it. One of the most important aspects of the Singular Live experience, which is our developer portal and our latest version of the API, which is version 2.0. The portal, start with that, has undergone some massive upgrades. It includes a much better organizational structure, all kinds of examples for composition scripting, tips, quick guide for controlling your Singular graphics. And part two, or I should say, what's going to lead in from the portal will be the API version 2.0. Tremendous amount of work done by our team. So big hat tip to everybody on our team that was involved. And one of the guys that was deeply involved is joining us, and that's Thomas.
Mostly involved, right?
He's our backbone of this entire push. And it's I've actually had to use it for a project recently, and it's amazing. It really is. And it's not until you have a project that you really dive into it that requires sort of that deep dive integration with Singular, but it is just really easy. And I'm not, as many of you know, I'm not a scripter, I'm not a programmer by nature, but I can certainly get through from the portal into the API 2.0, and it's been really wonderful experience. So I think we're going to turn this one over to, actually, before we turn it over, I'm going to say a few words about the developer portal and the introduction. Like I said earlier, organizational structure is greatly improved. You can see Thomas is sharing his screen right now. He's in the quick starts, which is a really nice place to start because you can go through and see the basics, to kind of get the underpinnings of the structure of how Singular is controlled, how to send API calls. And I think there's one point I wanted to mention that I was mentioning to Catherine and Thomas before we started is there's a key point here, which is to say that version 1.0 is not obsolete. It's not gone. There is no sort of sunset period defined clearly. It will go on for quite some time. So there are still use cases where you can still use 1.0, but I would say that API 2.0 moving forward, if you have a new project or even an existing project, you can use them in conjunction with one another. It's not that 1.0 is gone. It's just that 2.0 is the path forward. As I mentioned to Catherine and Thomas earlier, I have a project right now which is going to require both versions, but it will rely heavily on 2.0, which is what we're going to talk about today. So I think Thomas Molden, who I'm sure many of you who are watching this stream are familiar with, is going to walk us through. We're going to start with the portal, the developer portal, and then we're going to work our way into the API 2.0. So Thomas, what do you think? Dive into the introduction?
Yeah, I can take over from here. The developer portal, well, it's structured in various sections. It's one section covering the REST API, and you'll find a detailed description about how to use it with Postman, because that's what we used to provide a collection for the REST API. You'll get details about data stream and how to use it within composition scripting. We added a big section about composition scripting, including some cheat sheets describing all aspects of functions that the composition script provides. We also added use cases there for composition scripts that give you an idea and the guidance, including the composition script to achieve just results like this, where you can style HTML text, or in a bit more advanced version where you can style your HTML text with a background. If you have
really quick on that, Thomas, this whole entire section, composition scripting, is completely new. Is that correct compared to the previous developer portal?
Yes, this section is completely new. We added it. We had some webinars covering composition scripts, and we got a tremendous feedback. So we said we have to provide some documentation on it, some cheat sheets, which makes it easier to you guys to jump into that topic, because it's really, really powerful. And if you have specific wishes or questions or use cases that you want to address us, let us know. We're happy to add such use cases to the developer portal. Or if it's a very specific one, then we can send you code snippets to help you getting further with your project. And another section which we added is the Singular SDKs with the graphics SDK and the overlay SDK. I just want to mention that, and also the widget SDK. If you're looking into extending the functionality of the composer. But now let's just jump back and go right into the Postman collection. The Postman collection, it describes in detail the API version 2, and we try to simplify it and make it easy to use. So all the requests which are here, they use the shared app token for authentication, and you don't need any further username and password or any other method to authenticate to send content or request content from your app instance. API version 2 also has rate limits, and these rate limits are different for different subscription types. Of course, enterprise have a very high limit versus a free subscription have a very low limit. So to mention that endpoints that use rate limits are only endpoints that send data towards the Singular backend. If you request information from your control app, that doesn't count into the rate limits. If you run into limitations, you can see those in the response header of your post or patch call. And if you see any difficulties, face any difficulties, let us know. So we are happy to help you out of that. So now let's have a look at the calls to get information from the app instance. Those calls are all GET calls. And the base URL, it looks a little bit different to API version 1. So for getting and controlling control apps, we have the API version 2 and the control apps path in the request URL, and then it's the app token. There is one call to get the metadata, which describes the app instance in detail. There is another call which gets you all the control model and the structure of the composition. You use that when you want to write an application and build your own custom UI for exposed control properties. And the third one is to get the control properties with the current payload and the current animation state. So let's look into it, how this looks in real life. So I'm jumping into my Singular dashboard.
And so really quick, Thomas, the difference between these calls between API 1 and 2 is authentication, correct? In the sense that version 1 requires username, password authentication. This only requires app token information. Is that accurate?
Yes, or API version 1 also allowed and supported app tokens. And in addition, basic authentication, we simplified that in API version 2, that when you want to talk to control apps, you just need to use the shared app token, which you'll find in your dashboard in the inspector mode. I downloaded 2 control apps, 2 templates from the template library before. One is my favorite one. And, you may have seen that in some webinars before. It's this lower third momentum. And then there is another one. It's the iconic template, which has a lot of subcompositions and a lot of elements which will also address with the REST API. So now when you select the controller and you just copy and paste the shared API URL, it's just paste it in here. So what you see is that now you see the API version 2 base URL. That's what you copy. And when I just use the call, I'll get all the metadata of that app, which includes the ID, user ID, the account where the app is in, when it was updated, when it was created, the type of the element. Of course, it's a control app here. Then we see the output URL. We get the broadcast output URL, which is a second independent output that's used for very specific broadcast workflows in some integration projects. We have the public control URL. You know that when I just open this in another tab, this brings up the UI, which we see here. Then we have the model API URL. So when I open this one, you'll get a very detailed description of the control model of that particular composition. And when we look here, that's the at the top, there is the root composition, and it has several sub-compositions there. And when we look at the sub-composition, that's with the name lower header, there is the model of the fields, of the control node fields that are exposed with default values, with, of course, the type, with the title, as it's then named within the composition itself. Let's have a look there. So we are in the header, and the title is title, and it's type of text. So when we jump here, so it's the header, and then we have the title, header and main text there. Maybe I looked into a different one. Yeah, no, that's the main text, so that's correct. So and
really quick, your data has been parsed, right? So this isn't what it looks like by default because you've got an add-on in Google Chrome.
Correct.
Yes, I'm
okay,
using
just so you guys are
add-on that displays JSON structures that are returned in a nice way.
That's a really good one, because if you don't have that add-on, I can't remember, there's a number of them out there in Google add-ons for visualizing JSON in your browser. So that's a super handy tool. I think we can, I can't remember the name.
I can probably find that and drop it in for you guys. If you hit raw, Thomas, just so, I mean, obviously JSON formatter. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
Yep. JSON
so
format.
It's just one string.
How it would look like. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so there is another URL, which is, I think, the most commonly used one. It's the URL to control the data in the control app. When I open this one in the new browser tab, again, you'll see the subcomposition ID, the subcomposition name, the state of that composition, and the control node with the current data. And again, when we just look down here, so we'll see our lower header subcomposition. It's in the in state, and that's the content which currently is there. When I change that, let's say this is just name it header, and then this also header or main text. There we go. So it's updating here. And when I just go back, send the request again. So we have the new content right here in the payload. So that's the requests and the response bodies from the API version 2, which we think it's a lot easier than in the previous API version 1. So now, how can you actually get and make use of the API and of the command collection? Well, the best way to get use of that is when you load the command collection into your local Postman installation. You can download it either in your Postman account. Postman, by the way, you can create an account and it's for free. And you can run it on the web or on a local Postman installation, which I'll do. So I just download it. And then I'll import it into my webinar workspace, which is here. And it says import it, and I'll have all the documentation here on this side, and I can open it and see the commands and also the responses, the response bodies here in this area, as we saw previously within the web browser. Okay, now let's have a look what we can do with and how we send data. Well, sending data is done with the patch command and with a response body. So the response body now is simpler and easier to use. You basically just can copy and paste the payload and the payload structure from the control application into your REST request, and that's all what you basically need. You also can, and controlling animations is also a lot simpler. You just define the state of the next animation state which you want to see, and this is either the in or the out state of the animation.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
In addition, we added another endpoint, and this endpoint allows you to send commands to your Singular control app. And there is one command that we published in this collection, and it's the command to take out all subcomposition with a single click of the button or with a single call. So that's what you want to have if you have a lower third, a side bundle, and a logo bug, and probably a ticker, and you want to take out all of them at the same time. So that's the command to use, and we'll see it in action right away. So if you want to test now the command collection, I'll just go to the Singular API demos. And the Singular API demos have the endpoints defined in a way where you're flexible and easily can just use the token of your control app, and you can add that into either directly into the request URL. What we did is we exposed that token in all the commands in variables, and the variable is defined at the collection level, which is here. And when I just click this button, I'll see the variables. I close the documentation, and the app token, well, the initial value, it has a descriptive text. The current value also has descriptive text. But what I want to do actually is take this lower momentum. I'll just move that, slide that a little bit to this side, and then copy and paste the token into the current value. There we go. And then click the save button. So this little red dot, it indicates that I changed the value but didn't save it. So it's important to click the save button. Then this new variable is published and used throughout this command collection. And now when we hover over this variable, we'll see that the current value of this variable is what we have in our token. So, and now it's really easy to use. When I just click the button, I'll get in response the entire control options for that particular app. And the same way, I can also update my payload and the controls which are here. And we prepared the payloads corresponding to that lowest momentum app, so where the subcomposition name is the lower header, and then we set the header and we set the main text. Well, that's the Postman header and main text from Postman. So when we send that, the content updates in this in the output right away.
Nice.
What I also would like to point out, let me change this text again. The UNO apps, they have something in particular. The UNO apps, they have an API, which means when I send a REST call to this app, the UNO UI updates the app according to what's visible in the output. And this way, the UI of UNO always is in sync with what you see in the output. So that's a bit an advantage that the UNO UIs and the UNO apps have versus Studio. Studio is an older app. It doesn't yet have an API. Okay, so that's about sending data. Now let's have a look into sending and updating the animation state. So as you see here, that's a lot easier. So you just have the payload, which looks exactly the same as in the description. So we have the subcomposition name and we set the state. So that's the state in the out state. And when I just send it, so it's animated off. And also the UNO UI shows that it's animated off. At the same time, of course, you can combine updating content and sending data. This was what the next example does. It sets the header and the main text to a new text and the state to in. When I play with that, nice. You'll see this accordingly. And in the next step, what you also can do is you can create response and request bodies and REST requests, sending data to multiple compositions at the same time.
Can we go back to that previous command that or the one that you had done prior? So if you're sending content to update the graphic and you're sending a state of in at the same time, it's going to update the contents, the text first before it takes the graphic in. Is that an accurate assumption that that's always going to happen?
Yes, the command happens at the same time. It's sent at the same time, and the text updates then when you animate it in. Of course, if you have an update animation on the text field, which is very, very long, which is longer than the animation, then you may see some overlapping, but usually that's not the case. So then the last call that we have here in line to look at is the take out call, and that's actually a command which clears all elements from the output. And what I'll use therefore is this iconic soccer, because this one has a lot of elements down here, and I'll just animate some of them in. There we go. Let's take this one. Okay, that's good enough. And then move it a little bit here, so we see. And now when I animate off all the subcompositions at the time, I'll send the command take out all output. And what I need to do first, almost forgot.
I was going to say that's not going to work, is it?
That's not going to work because why doesn't it going to work? Because we still have here the app token from the UNO app. And what we need is the token of the iconic soccer app. What I'll do here is I'll just copy it and then replace the app token directly here in the path. So this exactly does then the same. And now we address this command to this output. And when I play it, everything animates out at one point at the same time. And well, here you see the confusion that what happened to me right before, because I tested this command. The Studio UI, it doesn't update because it doesn't have an API as the UNO apps have. Well,
I think if you're
so the
to
conclusion
that point,
of, sorry, go ahead,
to that point, you know, as long as you're aware of that, it's not that Studio isn't functioning. It's just that it's not going to update the UI. Whereas UNO, you can go, it's because of the API, the UI is going to reflect the calls that you make to it. And you can go back and forth. You can go to the UNO UI, take things on, come back over to the Postman trigger. You'll see the relationship between, or the API functioning so that you have updates on the UI. So again, it's not that Studio doesn't work. It's just without the API, there can be some confusion there. It's definitely a good point worth bringing up.
Yeah. So it might not be, I don't want to say smart, but you can have a hybrid approach, like Steven said, with these UNO apps, these more targeted graphics, you know, controlling in the UI versus even controlling in a Stream Deck from the API directly, or but in the sense of Studio, a hybrid approach is just going to confuse people, and you know, that's natural. It's just not adapting to the calls that you're sending as originally designed. That's going to change in the future, but
yeah. One thing to point out is if you are using API version 1 calls, or need calls or need specific calls that are only available at the moment in API version 1, you'll find them in the previous API versions down there. So we attached the REST API version 1 endpoints down here. Okay, so that's basically a quick overview of API version 2. If we have a minute, we probably just can jump back to the developer portal and just maybe it's interesting for you. At least it's interesting for some of you guys that have requested details about how can we extend or add specific features to the Composer. That's the widget SDK. A very quick overview here with the widget SDK. Well, we describe how to set up your local environment for download the CLI and get started with widgets, with creating widgets, defining a widget boilerplate, which explains details that happen when you initialize a widget or when widget value are changing. There's also an example for defining widget UIs with a lot of detailed references and functions about the widget SDK. We've added a simple example for a widget which you can use and which you can test in your account. You'll just follow the instructions in getting started to create a widget in your account. And then you can use the code and the files which are here in the widget example that creates CSS patterns into your widget UI definitions, and upload also the output HTML code. What this widget basically does, it defines a UI that allows you to select a pattern, select a background color, a front color, and spacing of your specific pattern. That's the way how the widget fields are defined. So the first one is a selection with some predefined values Then there is a color ID for the background, one for the front, and some spacing details. And down there, we group them together in a single card so that it's well organized, nicely organized within the widget UI. And it displays like this then when you load the widget. The widget output itself looks like that. When you load the widget into your composition, and the output HTML that creates this CSS patterns, well, is this here where we define the pattern styles with CSS parameters up here, initialize the widget there, and define what should happen when a value changes in the widget, like you select a new pattern or change the spacing or define new background, new foreground colors. And once that's done, the pattern is redrawn and with the style which is had been defined here. The end, this looks like.
It's pretty cool. I like your custom widget here.
Yeah, when you load the code into your account, you'll find the widget then within the development versions under my account. So there we have two widgets defined. One is the pattern widget, which I have here, and this then provides the UI. I've linked it to control nodes. I can select different styles, which are here. Circles, there is triangles, there are rectangles. I can change the color or set one color transparent. And of course, then you can change the spacing there in between. So that's a very quick and brief introduction and overview to the widget SDK on the developer portal. And also there, if you have specific requests or needs or ideas, let us know. We're happy to help you and guide you into the right direction when developing your widgets.
Yeah, and we had a previous discussion actually about how it's a pretty good lead in to what we think is going to be our next topic for the next webinar, which is the widget SDK and building your own custom widgets, because we've got, people have a variety of projects and needs, and I'm sure there's many of you out there that might benefit from, custom widgets in your production. So unless anyone contests, that's probably going to be our next topic. Sorry, Stephen. Sky's
the limit on the widgets, really. I mean, it really opens up Pandora's box. You can build, for example, if you had a pretty custom topic bar, lower third, or full screen. Clearly, you can build the individual elements widget based in a composition, rectangles, gradients, images, and what have you. But if you get to the point where you say, okay, I've got a package where it really makes sense to build a custom widget. A widget can be what Thomas is describing here, with just 4 properties exposed, that's pretty, you can sprinkle that in amongst other widgets, or you could have a widget that literally draws an entire lower third with your design. It just depends on how granular you want to get and where you want sort of the controls, I'll say. So we have a number of customers that do a little bit of both. They might build their own widget for specific use cases, but it's an extremely powerful piece to the puzzle. And documentation now, especially with this example now, it really, if nothing else, it really opens your eyes to what you can do with widget developments in a composition, in and amongst other widgets, basic geometric widgets, like I said, rectangles or text, or just sort of the basic building blocks of compositions. But this one is particularly powerful because the sky's the limit on CSS in terms of patterns. I mean, for backgrounds or what have you, it's as creative as you want to get. So I'm really glad we have this out there. I'm hoping a number of our customers partners and enterprise customers and advanced pro users really dive into this if they're so inclined, because the documentation is there now to really, get you off the runway, so to speak. And as always, hit us up with questions and stuff and snags and things that might come up and examples. But now we have a really good starting place for widget development. So I'm excited about this one. It's powerful.
Yeah, me too. It's very cool.
Great. I'm just keeping an eye on the clock, and this time we are not that much overtime.
That's good. I don't, let me see. Do we have any? We can open the floor up to questions. We love our questions from our group. If anybody has any, anyone who's watching this video not live that might watch it later, please hit us up with questions regarding widget development or the API in general. Any questions between version 1.0 or 2.0 and the developer portal in general. There's quite a bit in there, but it's much easier to get around. It was a lot of work, quite a bit of work, but well worth the effort, because every day that goes by, we have more and more people integrating and using Singular within their own product offerings. Happens just constantly. People are coming up and wanting to use Singular for their graphic drawing needs. Look, we have a question. We have a ticker on the bottom, like a momentum or iconic. How do we do an RSS pull for that?
Good question. It's a good one.
It's a good one. I've done a number of
Thomas?
Yeah, or there's so many. I will open by saying I've done a number of RSS feeds into tickers with everything from, say, a Google Sheet, where I have a simple function in Google Sheet that grabs the data from an RSS feed. I will say, before let me take a rewind. Thomas is going to bring up this great example. He did this project for a partner of ours. Just in general, RSS feeds, as most of you know, or anyone who's on this stream, watching this stream, they come in many different flavors. There is no standardized RSS feed that always comes in the same way. That's the first thing to always remember. So one of the things that I do, have done is use Google Sheets function for import. I believe it's import data or import
feed. I think.
Import feed, yeah, and you can bring in the feed into a Google Sheet, and then you can send that data to a Singular app. Pretty straightforward and easy. But then you can also do it without a Google Sheet in a script, where you actually write a composition script that makes the call for the data and requests it on a certain frequency. But I'm going to stop speaking, because now I see Thomas has loaded up this example where he is getting the International Space Station coordinates via a composition script, if I'm not mistaken, right, Thomas?
Yeah, well, actually, this is just visible. And what I basically did is I downloaded the composition from the webinar part 3, where we cover
data owner,
RSS feeds, the integration with RSS feeds using a Google Sheet. And we cover it in various ways. So is quite a bit on functionality there that also utilizes composition script to manage the data internally. So what the magic here is with RSS feeds is that we have a Google Sheet widget that connects to a spreadsheet and reads a specific value range from a sheet called RSS ticker. We're going to look into that right away. I've loaded it up there. And then what I want to point out that this Google Sheet widget, it's just there and acts as a connector to your Google Sheet data. When you open the widget composition, you see all the table JSON and the REST data basically here. So how do the REST data come into the widget? That's actually pretty easy. And that's the Google Sheet, which goes with that composition. What we use here is a function, a Google Sheet function, which is called import feed. And this import feed function takes an URL from a composition, from an RSS feed, and then reads the number of items which you specify here into a table. And that's what it is. And the Google Sheet widget in the composition defines the range B6 to B16, so which is this one, B6 to B16, reads that. And then we get into the composition and further into the composition script, the title and the summary, and of course URL and creator, but we don't use that. And the Google Sheet app widget requests every 10 seconds a new data from the Google Sheet if that changes. There's another nice thing about Google Sheets. You can define when you use this import feed function, or also when you use Google Finance function, you can define within the settings that calculations and requests should happen all either on change or every minute or every hour. So this then basically keeps this table with the RSS feed details always up to date. Okay, now let's go a little bit further into how the Google Sheet widget does that and how you can get this Google Sheet and the RSS feed data into the composition script. So let me open the developer tools and wait a little bit. So what the Google Sheet widget does by default, it sends custom messages, in this case every 10 seconds, to the composition script. And this custom message includes all the JSON, all the data from your Google Sheet in a JSON, where you see date created, the summary, the title, and the URL. And the composition script reads this custom data with a message listener. And that's also described within the new developer portal, and then sends this JSON to the subcomposition, which is called the lower flipper, which is this one down there. Well, that's a very quick and overview of this particular option to get RSS feeds and into Singular compositions. I hope it helps you with your project. So let's just go through these to the listeners, which we have here.
So do you mind if I say something real quick, Thomas,
please.
on this? So it seems fairly complex. It was actually easier previously, just so you guys just have the full picture, in that I think we had a widget for RSS, right? But because of the fact that RSS feeds, like Steven said, are not standardized, they're all over the place. It was just too hard to have a standardized widget to manage RSS feeds. So the best way to go about it now is to do what Thomas has demonstrated, utilizing the import feed from Google Sheets and then going from there.
This Google spreadsheet, it does a lot more, because you clearly have another option versus using the Google Sheet widget in the composition. You can use a mechanism like this one, where you have functions and you define them within your Google Sheet as extensions and as app scripts. And then push data from the Google Sheet to your Singular composition. So that's another option doing that. And if you have a lot of data and want to have updates, let's say in time or more frequently, we suggest pushing data from the Google Sheet into the composition versus having multiple compositions, Google Sheet widgets instances then within your composition. We've seen specifically, it depends a little bit where people come from, and mostly users that were working with Vimix before, they add tons of Google Sheet widgets into their composition, which causes a lot of traffic towards the Google Sheet API. And there is a hard limit from that Google provides there. And if this hard limit is reached, the Google API doesn't return any data anymore. So there we recommend clearly just look at the tutorials and the documentation we provide on the support portal to efficiently use the Singular Google Sheet widget, because there's a lot you can do with combining the Google Sheets widgets with, for example, the table widget.
Should we wrap it up since we've gone over a little bit?
Yeah, now we got a bit over time. But as long as there are questions, we're happy to stay live.
Yeah.
That's true. Do you guys have any other questions?
I don't see any other questions right now. I think that was a pretty good overview. I'm kind of glad that we went into Google Sheets and using composition script. It's a logical extension to the topic that there are two topics that we presented today, which is the dev portal as well as the API 2.0. So we will keep marching forward and be back with some more of these. These are more advanced type of examples. Hopefully we covered enough to get people started. And please, like as always, hit up our feedback loop and hit us with questions and stuff. We're always excited to hear what people are doing with Singular. So thanks everyone for watching. I think that about covers it for this one. Catherine, thanks for setting it up. Thomas, as always, great job going over everything. And we'll be back again soon with another live stream with us from Singular. Thanks everybody.
Talk to you soon. Bye.